Hi guys, another day, another Tory trying to defend the rise in use of food banks. This time it was the Health Secretary Victoria Atkins. She was asked to respond to new research that claims that more than 1 in 10 of people on universal credit have used a food bank in the past month. Food banks, as I said before, should not exist. They are yet another example of a failing society. Governments are supposed to look after the health, education and well-being of its citizens. When it comes to the Tories, they have abandoned the poorest and forced them to rely on charity to get by. And this includes people working and on universal credit. What was the Tory minister's response to all of this? Well, there are some wonderful food banks in her area. Have a listen to this.
New research showing more than 1 in 10 people on universal credit have used a food bank in the last month. Almost 800,000 people using food banks in the last month. What a damning indictment of this government.
Well, actually, if you look at the help that we've given across society, but very importantly targeted towards the poorest in society, you'll see that, for example, we've just had the most recent cost of living payment to recipients of universal credit. We've given more than £3,000 of support to the average household through these very difficult times with cost of living pressures. But actually, this is why the Prime Minister has put such an emphasis on the economy, because as we're able to, as we have done, halve inflation, that helps all of us, but it particularly helps those on the lowest incomes because they tend to be disproportionately hurt by high inflation.
Yet they still have to use
including,
food
of course, food inflation. Well, as I say, inflation is now more than halved. That is great news, and we want to grow the economy so that we're helping everyone, including, of course, people on universal credit, but we're really being able to build an economy that supports a much brighter future for us all, including our children.
Do you buy into the theory that some of your colleagues have espoused on this programme previously, that you only use a food bank if you want to?
I have the privilege of some wonderful food banks in my constituency, and I know that the people running those food banks do so with the very best of intentions. And what is more, I think some of the best outreach that food banks can do is if they are using they're not just helping people with the supply of food, but also trying to help people with, for example, debt management and so on. And I know that a lot of food banks do that work. I think that's really valuable work.
My goodness, Okay, let's get to the main point in a moment. But first of all, she talked about inflation and growing the economy. Now, she said that we've halved inflation. That's great news for everyone. Does she not understand how inflation works? Even if you have inflation, prices are still going up. So how are people better off if prices are still going up? Now, either she doesn't understand how inflation works or she pretends not to. And we've seen this on a number of occasions where they, including the Prime Minister, including the Chancellor of the Exchequer, not understanding how inflation works. Okay. Once again, if prices are going up by 11% last year and 5% this year, or 4% this year, they're still going up. Okay, so people are not better off, they're worse off. Now, she talked also about growing the economy, but the economy is not growing. There is a recession on. And whatever growth there is, it's very, very limited. So people are not better off. And how are you planning to grow the economy? There is no plan to grow the economy. If it's cutting taxes, well, then what you're going to do is you're not going to grow the economy. You're going to actually undermine public services even more, and you're going to force more and more people to use food banks. And finally, the main point, the food banks in her area. It's like some wonderful food banks in my area. Do these people not understand that if a food bank exists, it means government has failed? There should be no food banks. People should be able to live on universal credit or on some benefits. People shouldn't have to rely on food banks. If a food bank exists, once again, it's a demonstration that government has failed. Nobody should have to rely on a charity. When she was asked about this, she dodged the question. She was asked about other Tories who said that you only use a food bank if you want to. You only use one if you want to. People don't want to use food banks. There's a massive stigma connected with using a food bank. People try to avoid that, but they're forced into relying on food banks because they can't afford to cook meals or to buy food and feed their families. And the response is, Well, there's some wonderful food banks. See, these people understand that they have failed. They're not actually interested in actually succeeding. It's, we have failed as a government. More and more people are relying on charity. Then no skin of our nose. We don't care, because we're only focusing on the richest in society. We want cut taxes to help them. We want to reduce regulations to help them, and to hell with everyone else. We see it with the NHS as well. She was interviewed about the NHS, and she talked about more money for the NHS, but in a sense, it's not enough. This is a government of failure, and I think the clearest example of failure is food banks. Let me know in the comment section, guys, what you think. As always, your comments are greatly appreciated. Thanks a lot.